Hey guys, hoping all is well with everyone. So in this video, we are going to be continuing our read-along of The Secret Zoo, The Final Fight. And last time we finished, we completed Chapter 9, so we'll be starting with Chapter 10 today. And as always, I'll be showing you guys any kind of illustrations based on communication from Mr. Darby the Action Scouts. But again, these types of stories don't have too many illustrations. But that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the read today. Chapter 10, Back to the Basement. They're in bed, Noah whispered as he softly closed his bedroom door. Sam, standing by the closet, nodded. Noah glanced at his clock. It was just after 9 o'clock. His parents had retired to their bedroom, where they would likely watch television and read for the next hour before falling asleep. Megan was in her room as well. The scouts and all the secret citizens turned to their radio frequency. Just learned what Evie and Ella had discovered at Clarksville Elementary. Everyone had decided to let Ella and the Specters handle it. Noah went to his bed, stuffed a wad of dirty clothes beneath his covers, and opened a pocket on his Spectre pants, alerting chameleons to crawl out. He concentrated his thoughts, and a minute later, his mirage was complete. Noah, seeing what appeared to be himself lying in bed, took a step back, his gaze fixed on the illusion. "It's just creepy," he said. Sam pointed to Tameron's backpack, which was lying on the floor. "Come on, let's go." Noah slipped his arms through the shoulder straps. Then he touched the transmit button on his earpiece and said, "Guys?" "What's up?" Richie answered. "Sam and I are going to the museum to practice with Tameron's gear. I'll be back an hour at the most." "What about Mom and Dad?" Megan asked. "You better create a mirage again." "I already did," Noah said. "Megan, you know how to find me if you need to." "Yep," Megan said. "You're just around the corner." The scouts wished Noah good luck, and then he and Sam walked into his closet and through the portal to the Institute of Light. The descenders, some sitting around and others standing guard, turned their attention to Sam, expectantly. Sam told them about the centipedes in Clarksville Elementary and the hidden portal in the wall. When he finished updating everyone, he said, "Noah's going to train for a bit." Then he turned to Noah and said, "Gear up." Noah pulled the cords on his shoulder straps and braced himself for the pain. The tail dropped to the ground. He glanced over his shoulder. The tail was stretched out. 15 feet of destruction, if he could use it right. "Let's start with the column again," Sam said. As Noah prepared to go to work, the prairie dogs cleared the floor. It was easy to swing the tail the way he wanted, but more difficult to get power behind the movements. He concentrated on the temporary muscles near the base of his spine. "Okay," Sam said after a few minutes. "Let's try something new. Curl the end of your tail." Noah concentrated on the last few feet of his tail, which was lying on the ground beside him. After a few seconds, he was able to curl it inward. Then he was able to bend it the other way. "Good," Sam said. He pointed to a life-size statue of a polar bear standing on its hind legs, something that had probably once been in the museum. "Now grab the statue." "Grab it?" Sam nodded. "With your tail." Noah thought about it. After a few seconds, he swept his tail along the floor. He was able to squeeze the statue and drag it to a new spot. "Now throw it," Sam said, pointing to an empty area in the basement. "There." When Noah tried, his tail slipped off the statue and slid along the ground. "Try again," Sam said. Noah tried, but couldn't pick the statue up. "Again," Sam instructed. "Don't hesitate. Hesitation creates doubt, and doubt leads to failure." When Noah tried a third time, the statue wobbled, but that was it. Sam didn't say, "again," but his stare communicated the command. Noah glanced around. Everyone was watching, even the prairie dogs. He grabbed the statue again and again, but he wasn't able to throw it. Sweat beaded on his brow, and he realized how hard he was working. Sam stood nearby, his arms crossed. Noah angrily pulled the cords on his shoulder straps, and the tail retracted. He let the pack fall to the ground, took a seat on a nearby box, and tried to catch his breath. After a few seconds, he said, "I can't do it." "That's crap," Sam said. I've seen enough from you, and I know that you can. Now get up and try again. I can't breathe. You're breathing, Sam said. Now get up. No, Noah said, suddenly angrily at Sam's persistence and frustrated with himself. I'm done. We can try again later. Sam took a quick step toward Noah, and the zippers on his jacket jingled. There is no later. DeGraff isn't waiting. I'm not asking DeGraff to wait, Noah said. I'm telling you to. All across the basement, nervous whispering started. Get up, Sam said, and he took another step toward Noah. You've got 3 seconds. I'm not. But before Noah could finish, 2 hands pushed his chest, and he fell off the box to the ground. He stared up at Sam, who now seemed to tower above him. As he tried to stand, Sam pushed him down again. Then the descender picked up Tameron's backpack and threw it into Noah's stomach. Put it back on, Sam said. He turned, walked to a clearing, and faced Noah again. Grab the statue and hit me. I'm your target. The whispers became nervous chatter. Noah could barely believe what he heard. He shook his head. Hit me, Sam said. Remember, you're on the ground because I put you there. Aren't you embarrassed? Noah shook his head, but in truth, he was. Backing down from Sam felt like backing down from wide Walt. You should be, Sam said. As a matter of fact, Noah jumped to his feet and, at the same time, slipped on the backpack. He pulled the cords in the shoulder straps and the tail connected. Then he concentrated his thoughts on the base of the spine. His tail swung, and the last few feet of it curled around the statue. The polar bear flew through the air at Sam, who quickly pulled 2 zippers on his jacket, releasing his wings. The descender flew straight up, almost hitting the tall ceiling, and the statue passed beneath him and crashed harmlessly into a stack of boxes. Sam landed and allowed his silver wings to fall to his sides. He looked at Noah and smiled. Use your anger to focus, he said. That's what descenders do. Noah didn't know what to say. He'd been baited into reacting, that much was obvious, but he'd succeeded in throwing the statue, and right now, that felt good. Nice work, Sam said. Noah swelled with pride, and for the first time, he felt like he belonged to something other than the Scouts, a friendship rooted in a childhood that was quickly slipping away. Noah wiped the sweat off his forehead and thought about the time, guessing it was just after 10 o'clock. He looked around the basement and noticed the stairway to the floor above. Fireflies dotted the dim space with points of bright light. Is he up there? Noah asked. Sam followed Noah's gaze. Darby? Yeah, big man's probably upstairs, checking on things. Things? The city of species. I heard he spent most of last night staring out a window and what's left of his city. His city? These words had never been more true. Mr. Darby was Mr. Jackson, the man who'd helped build the secret zoo. Sam motioned to the staircase. Go. We have a few minutes. I want to talk to Tameron anyway. Noah looked at the stairs and wondered what was there. The truth, Mr. Darby had said, and Noah wanted to hear the rest of the old man's story. Go on, Sam said. Noah nodded. As he headed across the basement, Marlowe touched down on his shoulder. Noah took the steps 2 at a time, and at the top one, he was met with a peculiar light, constant, but alternating between dim and bright. The halls of the museum were speckled with the light of 1,000 fireflies. It looked like a magical starry sky had been captured in the space around him. Mr. Darby, Noah half whispered. Over here, came a voice, and Noah saw Mr. Darby standing by a large window, his hands clasped behind his back and at the end of his flowing jacket dangling by his heels. Noah took a slow step toward the old man, suddenly feeling like he was intruding. Come, Mr. Darby said. Let me show you something. Marlowe chipped in encouragement. As Noah headed toward the window, he gazed at the rows of gaudy gold frames on the walls, paintings and photographs showed different animals in various habitats. Fireflies flew all around, their light reflecting in the glass and glossy paint. As Noah approached Mr. Darby, he suddenly stopped, barely able to believe what he was seeing outside the window. "Don't be afraid," Mr. Darby said as he continued to look outside. "That time for that is over." Noah took a step, then another. His feet felt like huge weights, more difficult to maneuver than Tameron's tail. He moved in beside Mr. Darby, put a hand on the window, and stared out. The city species that he knew was gone. The streets were in shadow, a dense, dark fog hanging over everything. Animals lumbered around, their eyes glowing red and patches of fur missing. Some were fighting in the street, clawing and biting one another. They reminded Noah of the Sasquatches and what the Shadowists had done to them. When a few fireflies flashed beside Noah, a grizzly bear turned its gaze toward the window. Noah looked into the beast's red eyes and gasped. "Don't worry," Mr. Darby said. "The glass is tinted to protect the artwork. We're perfectly hidden." As the grizzly stalked over to the glass, Noah realized it was seeing its reflection. Thick drool dangled from its black lip, and its long claws etched lines in the street. It slowly swung its head from side to side and growled, probably thinking its image was another bear. As it got within a few feet of the museum, it fell back on its haunches and swung one of its front legs, just missing the glass. Then it abruptly turned and ran off, its paws pounding the street and its muscles quaking. "It doesn't know that it's sick," Mr. Darby said. "None of the animals do." Noah looked out at the lions, giraffes, rhinos, and tigers. They looked like monsters, not animals. "They'll flood your streets, Noah," Mr. Darby solemnly said. "If we can't stop them, they'll use the portals, old and new, to attack your world. It could happen at any moment. Tonight, perhaps." Noah stared out at the dark city and imagined Clarksville looking the same way. "There are people I can go to for help," he said. "My parents, the police, the army." Mr. Darby shook his head. "That might be what DeGraff wants." Noah turned his attention to the old man. A firefly touched down in his beard, flashed once, and then flew off again. "What are you talking about?" "The clouds," Mr. Darby said, gesturing out the window toward the sky. "Their shadows are full of DeGraff's magic. What if he were to release a storm on your police, your armies?" The thought piqued Noah's fear. He considered how Charlie Red and the other security guards had been changed by DeGraff's magic. Then he imagined the armies of Earth under the Shadowist's command. "No," Mr. Darby said. "We'll have to do it ourselves." He pointed to a tall tower that was barely visible in the fog. "There, technical tower. Our technicals made it back to their base. They're hard at work on the multi-point portal." "How close are they?" "Close." Noah stared at the technical tower. Zach, a weird, wily teenager with bad hair and hygiene, was the world's best hope. "Did you come upstairs for the truth?" Mr. Darby asked. Noah nodded. Mr. Darby walked off saying, "Let's go, then. Shall we?" Noah hesitated. He watched the old man through flashing fireflies. His heart started to race as he began to feel unsure about whatever he wanted to hear what Mr. Darby had to say. On his shoulder, Marlowe chirped, and Noah glanced over to meet the kingfisher's beady-eyed gaze. "Okay," Noah said to Marlowe. "We'll go." He steadied Tameron's backpack, his backpack, and hurried after the man who still seemed to have his greatest secret to tell. Chapter 11. Across the Institute of Light. As Mr. Darby led Noah across the museum, he said, "I suppose you're wondering about the fireflies, why they're here, and why there are so many." Noah nodded, even though fireflies inhabiting a building seemed ordinary enough for the secret zoo. Mr. Darby gestured to the surrounding artwork. "The natural light from the fireflies doesn't damage the art." Noah gently brushed a few fireflies off his arm, saying, "So that's why it's called the Institute of Light." "Partly," Mr. Darby said, "but mostly the name refers to the illuminating quality of art." The old man led them to a new wing of the museum, pushing through a pair of unlocked doors. Here, the artwork showed the buildings of the city of species in various states of construction. In some of the art, animals were helping, pulling carts full of supplies and carrying construction workers on their backs. In one painting, dozens of monkeys were scaling the tall steel framework of a new building to tell takes and to the workers in the heights. "Our history," Mr. Darby said as he gestured around him, "and our future, I hope." Mr. Darby paused and leaned over a drinking fountain. He held back his bushy beard with one hand and put his lips to the stream of water. And then he stood up straight, gave a loud "ah," and continued walking, his hands once again clasped behind his back. Noah grinned. Mr. Darby was like a kid in so many ways, playful and impulsive. How many men would pause to sip from a drinking fountain and then so loudly express their pleasure? Mr. Darby, an old man who wore a flashy velvet jacket and knew all the animals in his world by name. Sometimes he hardly seemed real. Sometimes he felt like a character from a daydream. As they entered a new hall, they walked through groupings of fireflies like patches of magical blinking snow. Above an open doorway, a sign read, "The History of the Secret Zoo," and Noah followed Mr. Darby into the respective room, a small gallery filled with art and artifacts. As Mr. Darby walked along a wall covered with old black and white photographs, he stopped and pointed to a grainy picture to a small town on a quiet street. Noah saw a barber shop with a striped pole and a sturdy-looking church with a tall steeple. "Clarksville," he said. "Early days." He moved to a new photograph, another black and white shot of stately home with large columns. "The Jackson house. My house." He pointed to a window on the second story. "This was Frederick's room." He smiled a sad smile and took a step away, almost reluctantly, it seemed. The next picture showed an old farmhouse with loose shutters and a crooked porch. Beneath the picture, words were engraved on a shiny gold plate. Noah leaned in and read them. "Where Simon the simian came from. Simon became the first animal in Mr. Jackson's private zoo." The farmhouse was exactly like Noah had imagined it while sitting on the floor of Hummingbird Hideout, listening to the story of Simon for the first time. Mr. Darby started walking again, pointing out to photographs, most of which were animals. A white fox, 4 ferrets, a peacock, a crocodile, and a chimpanzee. They came to a picture of a monkey with messy gray fur, long limbs, and a winding tail. A langur. Simon. Noah could practically see him jumping across the furniture in the Jackson house. "The first cage," Mr. Darby said. He was now pointing to a display case toward the middle of the room. In it was a series of rusty steel rails. "Or what's left of it, anyway. I still remember building it." "For Simon?" Noah asked. Mr. Darby nodded. "Once it became clear I couldn't keep the animals in my house, I had no other choice." He stared at what remained of Simon's cage. "I tried to take them as large and comfortable as I could, but you can't create the places animals long to be." He walked over to another picture on the wall and softly tapped the glass. It was a lesson this kind of boy learned as well. Noah moved to see who Mr. Darby was talking about. A smiling boy with rounded features and adult teeth that seemed too big for his mouth. His cheeks were dotted with soft freckles, and his messy hair stood up in different directions. Frederick. "My boy." Mr. Darby forced a smile and tried to hide his pain. "I still miss him." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the photograph Noah had seen him holding. He showed Noah another picture of Frederick. Noah touched the old man's shoulder to let him know he wasn't as alone as he probably felt. Mr. Darby continued to force a smile. Fireflies reflected in the dark lenses of his sunglasses, and again Noah briefly wondered about his eyes. "You should have told us that you're Mr. Jackson," Noah said. "I didn't want to scare you." "So your jacket keeps you alive? That's not so scary." "The jacket does more than that. It defines me. Mr. Darby, I mean." Noah raised an eyebrow. Mr. Darby started to walk off again, saying, "Come, let me show you something else." As they headed to the other side of the gallery, fireflies landed on their clothes and blinked like tiny white bulbs on a Christmas tree. Noah ducked and dodged the winged insects. Mr. Darby stopped at a tall rectangular glass case where a large piece of fabric was on display. Noah realized it was a curtain, dull red with fabric like old velvet. He moved in beside Mr. Darby and read the engraving on a small plate attached to the cabinet. "Mr. Darby's first jacket." "Jacket?" Noah said. "But it's a curtain." "Only at first glance," Mr. Darby said. "Or perhaps to those who lack imagination." Frederick never did. And after his mother died, he more and less vacated our world in favor of the ones in his head. I sometimes wonder if he kept his mother alive there. Mr. Darby became quiet. He stared at the curtain, which seemed like a screen for a movie of his memories to play upon. The animals. Oh, he loved the animals. First Simon, then the others. He spent hours playing with them from outside their cages, creating games and imagining things. They cured his depression, but not mine. Mr. Darby became quiet. He smiled, frowned, and smiled again. I tried over and over to reach out to my son, to bridge the distance between us. For a long time, I couldn't. But then, I found a way. Mr. Darby, the man who was really Mr. Jackson, Frederick's father, took a step forward and put a hand on the glass cabinet. Then he took a deep breath and began to tell the final part of his tale. And I'll stop the movie there, ending in chapter 11, but I hope you guys enjoyed the read today, and I hope you guys are doing well, and as always, please take good care of yourselves and be safe, and I hope to see you guys the next time we continue our read-along of The Secret Zoo, The Final Fight. But guys, thank you so much for watching, and take good care of yourselves.